This past Monday was the start of Apple's annual Worldwide Developers Conference, and to kick it off was their usual keynote where they announce all the updates to their OSs and sometimes announce some hardware. In this video, I'm going to go through what I think were the highlights of the announcements and give you my reaction to them. So stay tuned if you weren't able to catch the event live or you want to hear what I think you should be most excited about. What's going on everyone, my name is Gio and welcome back to Gio's Tech Views, where we're all about helping you understand and keep up to date with the latest news, trends and devices from the world of tech. So if you too are passionate about tech and want to learn more about it, hit that subscribe button and click on the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Before getting into the announcements of this year's keynote, I wanted to say that I enjoyed the way Apple dealt with having to live stream the event rather than delivering it in front of a crowd like they would normally do. They decided to pre-record the presentation and stream the recording, which avoided all sorts of awkward moments and pauses where clapping was supposed to happen. As you would expect from Apple, the production quality of the stream was extremely good, although some transitions were a bit weird and over the top in my opinion. Now let's jump straight into everything that was announced. The first announcement was the newest version of iOS, iOS 14, which saw several significant updates, some of which have long been requested by the community of iPhone users, including myself. The first and probably one of the most exciting updates was the redesign of the homepage, which now includes two new and very welcome features. The first is Widgets. If you've ever only used an iPhone, you might not be familiar with what these are. They're basically software elements which occupy a portion of the screen and allow you to interact and access information pertaining to a specific app, like the weather or music app, without having to open it. This has been a feature in Android phones for a long time, and its arrival to iOS has been highly anticipated by the tech community, including myself. Indeed, until now, we've only ever had a version of widgets which are available in the Today view, by swiping left from the homepage in current versions of iOS. While now, it will be possible to potentially position them anywhere on the screen, and customize their content and size. I say potentially, as in the presentation they really didn't show them everywhere on the screen, so it is possible that you will only be able to place them in the section of the screen where you already have apps. An interesting widget which was mentioned on stage was one they call the Smart Stack, which is a widget that changes throughout the day to show you the most relevant app or information for you at that particular moment. For example, it could show you the news in the morning and then your calendar throughout the day to help you keep track of your appointments, and then your activity information at night to remind you to work out. You can also swipe between widgets in the Smart Stack at your own leisure. The second very welcome improvement to the homepage was the inclusion of what they call the App Library. This too is a feature that's been around in Android phones for a long time, where it is usually called the App Drawer. As you might have guessed from the name, it is a place where all your apps are organized to help you keep track of them, which can be a problem when you start to have a lot of pages of apps in iOS. The App Library will be located at the end of the pages of apps which you normally have, and will automatically organize your apps based on categories like social media, games, etc. They didn't mention whether or not you will be able to customize these folders, so that's something I'm interested to find out. I will be taking a look at the beta of iOS 14 to find this out and to take a first hands-on look at the other new features, so stay tuned for that video. In addition, at the top of the app library, you will also find two folders for your most used and recently downloaded apps. Similarly, within each category, the most used apps will appear larger for you to access them easily with one tap. Lastly, you will also be able to hide all the pages of apps which you don't want to see, which is very good to keep your homepage clean and organized. In addition to the redesign of the homepage, iOS 14 will also bring many updates to other features. The last of what they call the updates to the core elements of iOS will be the introduction of picture-in-picture mode. This is a feature we already have in iPadOS and allows to minimize any video or call that is playing on the screen to be able to access other apps. Siri will also get a new compact design which appears at the bottom of the screen, and any information you ask it will appear as a notification at the top of the screen. They also said it will have a lot more information it can access directly, which should make it better at answering the typical voice assistant question and bring it closer to Google Assistant. In addition, it seems that in iOS 14, Siri will have updates to its voice recognition, as it will now be able to send audio messages and also run dictation on device. Continuing on the theme of features that are already available on Android, there will also be a new Translate app designed to translate conversations on the fly. Messages will also get some interesting updates. Specifically, what I like is the ability to pin conversations to the top of the Messages app, the addition of mentions, and the ability to reply to specific messages. It will also be possible to receive notifications from a group chat only when you're mentioned. Although it's not going to affect everyone's use, the integration of iOS with cars and navigation is also improved. The Maps app will be improved over previous versions. However, the new maps will only be available in the US, UK, Canada and Ireland for now. Two new modes of transportation have been added to the choices when asking for directions, both of which to give more environmentally friendly options. These are cycling, which includes information on elevation and cycling paths, and EV or electric vehicle routing, which includes information on charging points and green zones. Apple CarPlay will get new wallpapers, which are a nice touch, and new categories of apps which can be used. Most importantly, however, it will now be possible to have digital car keys directly on your smartphone, which can be shared and assigned restrictions for specific driving profiles. The first model which will support this is the 2021 BMW M5, but it will hopefully come to more manufacturers and models very soon. Lastly, the App Store also got a new interesting feature called App Clips. These are small parts of apps which can be used when needed without having to download the entire app. I think this is a great feature, as I often find myself wanting to pay for parking or do other small tasks with my iPhone, but don't want to or can't download the necessary app. This will work either by scanning a new QR-like code or through NFC, which will mean you only have to tap the symbol and the new app clip will be brought up on the screen. What remains to be seen is how many apps will implement these features and how fast. Following iOS 14 was the announcement of iPadOS 14, which got all the new improvements of iOS 14, including the new Siri and widgets, but also some new extra tweaks designed specifically for the iPad. First, iPadOS 14 has redesigned sidebars and toolbars in many of the core apps like Photos, Calendar, and Files to allow for easier organization and navigation of the apps. Search was also redesigned similarly to Siri to be less intrusive. It will now only occupy a small portion of the screen and can be accessed within any app, and carry out universal searches including web pages, but also photos, files, and contacts within your iPad. Continuing on this theme of less intrusive elements of the OS, notifications for incoming calls will now only occupy a small portion of the screen at the top, like a normal notification. I hadn't thought much about this before, but it was definitely an annoying feature of previous versions of iOS and iPadOS. However, what I'm personally most excited about are the updates to the Apple Pencil interface. As I've said in previous videos, I really enjoy using the Apple Pencil, and these updates will definitely improve the experience. The overarching theme of many of these improvements is bringing the advantages of typed text to handwritten text too. What this means is that the iPad will now be able to recognize handwriting as text, and allow you to highlight it, move it, and cut and paste it like you would do with normal text. It will also recognize handwritten phone numbers, emails, and addresses, and allow you to call the number, start a new email, or ask for directions directly by tapping on them. The second cool feature will be the ability to write with the Apple Pencil in any text field, and the iPad will now recognize the text and translate it into normal typed text. Although it did not get a lot of space within the keynote, one of the announcements I was most happy about regarded AirPods. Ever since I bought my AirPods, I've never gone back. They're just so convenient, you put them on, they connect automatically and you're good to go, with no cables and no hassles. However, there's always been one small issue. Whenever I wanted to use them with another device, I would need to connect them manually. Instead, now AirPods will detect which device you're using and switch between them automatically. Together with this, probably another announcement I was really excited about regarded the Apple Watch. Indeed, WatchOS 7 also got some interesting improvements. First, it now allows more personalization of watch faces with information from specific apps, and these customized faces can now be shared between people. I don't personally use many apps on my Apple Watch and have enjoyed my infograph watch face, but I'm still curious to see how much customization will be allowed. Workouts, which they said is the most used app on the Apple Watch, will also get support for some new activities like core exercises, cooldowns, functional strength training, and dance. This will also be accompanied by a new app on the iPhone called Fitness, which will substitute the current Health app. However, the coolest feature of WatchOS 7 in my opinion is one I've thought about a lot since I purchased the Apple Watch, and it's sleep tracking. This is a feature I've wanted for a long time personally, as I know how important sleep is and I've wanted an easy way to track my habits. The reason I've always thought Apple didn't include sleep tracking on the Apple Watch was the need to charge it every night, but I guess they hope that you'll be able to get a full 24-hour battery life and charge it quickly in the morning, and I guess we'll have to see about that. I will probably take the chance of this new OS to also review my Apple Watch, so keep an eye out for that video. Another small feature they included in WatchOS 7 is very 2020 and is automatic hand wash detection, based on hand movements and sounds. This will activate a 20-second countdown to help you wash your hands for the recommended amount of time. There were also several announcements regarding privacy, tvOS, and HomeKit, but I don't have time to go into them today. The last big software announcement they made was obviously the new version of macOS, which they called Big Sur. Overall, the biggest changes to macOS this year seem to be in its design. Indeed, on stage they said that it will be the biggest redesign since macOS 10, and accordingly, this will be macOS 11. In general, macOS Big Sur will bring consistency in the looks between iOS and macOS. All aspects of the OS have been aesthetically redesigned. All the app icons will now be square and look a lot like the ones on the iPad and iPhone. Similarly, the dock will also look like the one on the iPad. All windows will now have rounded corners, and all the buttons will highlight when hovered over, like in iPadOS. All the sidebars and toolbars have also been redesigned in a similar way. In addition, Control Center will be introduced to the Mac, and can be accessed from the top right corner of the display. I'm personally not sure how much I will like this redesign. As with Apple's mobile devices, although consistency is good, bringing elements designed for one interface to another is not always great. A new notification center with widgets will also be introduced to macOS Big Sur. Although I don't personally use the notification center on the Mac much, it will be interesting to see whether widgets will bring new functionality. However, probably the app that has been redesigned the most on macOS Big Sur is Safari, and in this case there have been some useful updates. The two main categories of improvements have to do with privacy control and tab management. It is now possible to customize Safari's start page with, for example, a background image. In addition, tabs will now have little icons to help remind you what's in them, and it will be possible to access a preview of the tab by hovering over it. Lastly, one other interesting feature is the ability to close all tabs to the right of a specific one you like. In terms of privacy, Safari now supports extensions which can be built into the top bar of the page. Plus, it now gives you a lot more information on what websites are tracking you and allows you to control your privacy preferences more closely. Carrying over from the new Translate app on iOS, Safari will now also be able to translate your web pages. Last but certainly not least was the only hardware announcements of the keynote. Contrarily to the rumored announcements of new iMacs, there were no Macs announced at the keynote, although Tim Cook did hint there was new Mac in the pipeline. Instead, Cook announced a very significant change to the Macs, which was also rumored. He announced that Apple will be switching from Intel-based processors to their own Apple Silicon processors. This will give Apple total control over their software-hardware integration, which is already something they're very renowned for. However, if you, like me, just bought a new Intel-based Mac, don't despair just yet, as Cook said that the transition will take about 2 years, and they will still release new updates to macOS for Intel-based processors for years to come. Cook announced that the first Mac with Apple-based chips should be released by the end of the year. No information was given as to which Mac this will be, but it has been rumored that these Apple chips will most likely go into lower-powered Macs at the beginning, such as MacBook Airs or lower-end MacBook Pros. This change also comes at a very good time, considering all the complaints that have been regarding the relatively small performance upgrades seen in the latest versions of Intel chips. They then went on to extensively explain how developers will be able to adapt their current apps to the new architecture, and said that popular apps like Microsoft Office and Adobe's suite of apps are already in the works. Therefore, this will mean that there will be a transition period before everything becomes perfectly optimized for these new processors. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned before, new Intel-based Macs are in the pipeline, and I'm assuming Apple expects people to buy them. Therefore, I'm sure that Intel-based Macs will still be around for a while. Lastly, they mentioned that this change will also allow iPhone and iPad apps to run natively on Macs, which will be interesting to see. I know that was a lot of information, but I hope you're excited for the new updates as I am. If you want to know more about the experience of using the new versions of iOS and macOS, check out these two videos where I take a look at their betas and share my thoughts on new features. I'm personally excited about many of these new features, but let me know in the comments below what you are most excited about from this year's WWDC. And also let me know if you have any questions on them so that I can cover them in my next videos. But until then, I'll see you later.